Assalamualaikum. Hello, thank you all for coming to this session on perceptions of Palestine. My name is Ali Raza, and I teach history at the Lahore University of Management Sciences. And it's a great honor for me today to moderate this discussion on Palestine. I don't think I need to say much beyond noting that this past year we have borne collective witness to the sheer devastation and the destruction and the genocidal onslaught on Raza by the Israeli occupation. The bombs may have stopped for now, but the horror still continues, and ethnic cleansing remains a threat. And I think we have two fantastic speakers with us here today to speak about that. Let me just introduce briefly, if I may, our first speaker, Azza El-Hassan. She is a filmmaker and a professor of media practice at Doha Institute for Graduate Studies. She is also the recipient of numerous awards, far too many for me to mention. But also, I think, in regard to the session our session for today, she is the author of a recent book, The Afterlife of Palestinian Images, and the founder of the Void Project. And I hope we can speak more about that. Our second speaker for today is Hira Wasti Ahmed. She is the founder and editor of Acacia Magazine, founded last year, I believe. And it's a magazine for progressive, left-leaning Muslims, speaking to issues of course, Palestine, but much else beyond as well. So thank you both for coming to Lahore. And Azza, if we may start with you.
Not working. Now it's working. Can we dim the slide because I can't see anything? Perfect. Thank you. I want to start by telling you about something, an encounter I had years ago. But it was an encounter that touched me deeply, and it changed the course of my work. You see, in 2003, I was making a film, a filmic journey, where I went from Palestine to Jordan to Syria to Lebanon in search for the lost Palestinian archive. This archive belonged to the Palestine Film Institute, which was plundered during the Israeli invasion to Lebanon in 1982. For years, no one knew what happened to the films which the Institute produced. And I was hoping through this journey that I would find some of these films and would get to see the image which filmmakers in the 70s and 80s were formulating about Palestine and the Palestinians. The truth is, through this journey, I didn't find anything. And I ended up making my own archive about Palestine and Palestinians. The only thing is, in Syria, I met Musa. Musa was a cameraman who worked at the Palestine Film Institute. And during the Israeli invasion to Lebanon, before the institute was plundered, he went in and he took a 16mm camera. He took the camera and fled with it to Syria. And inside the camera, he found a used film reel. So someone had shot something, and it was still in the camera. Now, Musa didn't know what to do with this film reel because he couldn't develop it. And the institute that was maintaining these films was now destroyed. So he kept it inside the camera for 21 years until I came. And I was so excited to know that there was a film from the Palestine Film Institute which I could now watch. I took the film in order to develop it. And as we developed it, I discovered that humidity and dust has ate through its celluloids, that there was hardly any images left. But I want to show you something. Yes, let's play. Yes, but there is no sound. No, you have to see it with sound. It's much nicer.
حمدت الفيلم اللي أعطاني إياه موسى بسوريا. بعد 22 سنة متروك بالكاميرا ما كان ضايل عليه إشي. تخيلت إنه بقلب الفيلم في فيلم تاني. تخيلت إنه لثواني الهزيمة بتنتهي والضحية بتربح، وشكلها بتغير. والمطرودين برجعوا على البيت. وبعدين بلفوا على العالم وبغيروا. العالم ما في ضحايا.
Okay, I'm really sorry, I don't know what happened, but for some reason...
حمدت الفيلم اللي أعطاني إياه.
For some reason, that's not right. For some reason, some of the titles were missing, either, I don't know, anyway. The issue is that although I couldn't see any images on the film, but the mere presence of this film reel allowed me to imagine. And I imagined a future where victims win and their images transformed. And this idea that out of the ruins something anew can emerge is what captured me and which set me on a journey of wanting to find other encounters like this one. In 2017, now I'm going to switch to the PowerPoint, I began a journey of tracing and finding visual remains. And the reason I call them visual remains is because whenever a visual archive is looted, a photo or a film always escapes. You always find remains of the event. It's not like other archives. And also, at the moment when violence begins, you always have salvagers, people who go in and try to rescue material. In many ways, these visual remains are similar to what Homi Bhabha describes home remains, the unfamiliar, the uncanny, where you feel distant from something which you once knew and was very familiar to you. Most of the material I worked with belonged to cameraman and photographer called Hani Johariya. Hani Johariya was one of the founders of the Palestine Film Institute, and throughout his career, he filmed thousands and took thousands of pictures, but all of his work has been plundered. Today we know that some of his work is in the Israeli military archive because some Israeli filmmakers have used his material. Now this material is off limit to Palestinians. Palestinians cannot use it. And in many ways they only get to experience it as a second-hand experience as they watch Israeli films. The material I could work with was material which was salvaged by his wife Hind. Hind, from their home in Lebanon, took his 16mm camera. This camera was with him when he was shot. He died while filming during a bombing. Now this camera does not work anymore. You can't use it to film. And I wanted to explore if it's possible to have another use for this kind of equipment. I asked his daughter, who has nothing to do with filming or camera, to assemble it in a box. And it was very interesting that while she was trying to assemble it, it unlocked lots of issues for her. And suddenly this camera, which was used by her father to create images, became a way for her to discuss other things. The legacy of this man which has been all plundered, now is this camera, 6 contact sheets which of a shooting he did in 1969. All the material is gone. All we have is these contact sheets. Now the young ones might not know what a contact sheet is. But anyway, a contact sheet is usually what the photographer would do in order to be able to choose images. And the images on the contact sheets are all tiny, tiny figures. So it's not really like this is his raw material, not the actual images which he later on created. But this is all we have. So the question was, do I reproduce the past? Do I bring the photos and make them gigantic the way he did them? He always wanted to portray Palestinian fighters as mighty and strong and blah, blah. Or do we experience them as visual remains? And of course the decision was to maintain the story of these images today, which is different from their story when they were first created. So they remained as they are, contact sheets, and the spectator who would come and engage with them would do what Jawhariya once did. They would use the viewfinder to look at these tiny images, and they would construct their own narrative. And for example, as the first user of the viewfinder, I constructed my own narrative of these images. So I saw a group of refugees who are very happy and excited. They were watching a ceremony by Palestinian fighters, and they were dreaming. One of the refugees noticed the photographer and began looking at the photographer instead of the spectacle. And this is my favorite refugee, the one with the glasses. Now the thing is, the story which I just told you does not exist at all. Jawhariya never created these images. These pictures were never chosen by him. And this is the thing, that if you use the contact sheets as they are, you end up developing your own narrative, which might not necessarily have to do with what Jawhariya wanted. In fact, if you follow the red dots on the hat, then you will see a completely different narrative. The red dots are the shots which he did choose and made out of them portraits. So Jawhariya was very interested in portraying women as part of the Palestinian struggle, not only women, even kids. So this was something which the whole society was part of. And as you can see, the women are central figures in the portraits. But yeah, these images are gone. And during the exhibition, one of the visitors wrote in the book, and she said, "I was taking a peek into a very secret and hidden bunker of testimonies. For an outsider, the war portraits and portraits of murder and child soldiers and emaciated, I can never say this word, fighters will haunt me for a long time. The whole thing is a treasure trophy of memories and outrage." Now it's lovely what she wrote, but if you think about it, this is not what Jawhariya wanted. And it just makes us think how much the material now is different from what the original makers wanted out of them. He did not want hidden treasures. He wanted Palestinians out there. We can all see them and we can all listen to them. Instead, today we're seeing them from behind a viewfinder, and they look more like ghosts. Spectres, I would say. Derrida's spectres who are coming here to ask us to take a stand, a position. I want to end by telling you how personal the journey of looking into national archives. Although they're national archives, but they're actually our archives. So it's our personal stories. One of the material I worked with belonged to the second generation of filmmakers in the Palestine Film Institute. The filmmaker called Arab Lutfi had collected testimonies with Palestinians in Lebanon. And I chose the film because it was one of the last films that were done by the Institute. I didn't choose it because I've seen it before. But I took it off her and I was going to restore it in order to see how it works as a visual remain. Now the weird thing is, I belong to a family who originally from Haifa, and they became refugees in 1948. like all other Palestinian families, my family never really told us the story of how they became refugees. And strange thing, I was watching this film and I suddenly heard the voice of my uncle narrating how his family left Haifa that day. And it was the first time I hear the story. And so it is, when we think of National Archives, we need to think that these are personal stories that are being looted and plundered. I have a lot to say, but I think enough till here. And I hope you read the book and then you'll know more about it. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing this. There's a striking images, and I'm wondering if I can follow up with a question, if that's okay. So, if I could just follow up with a quick question. Those images are striking. Thank you for sharing them. But you spoke about the looting and the plunder of archival footage, which a historian in me is thinking of other colonial occupations and how colonizing armies have sought to destroy the memory even of colonized populations. So if you could speak a bit more about that, what did that look like?
Yeah, of course, this is not particular to Palestinians, and you're absolutely right. All colonized nations have, and cultures, like women have experienced colonial plunder and but what's interesting is how do cultures, and this is what I'm trying to focus on, how do cultures deal with this loss? So there's literature about people animating and like using also oral narratives to compensate for what's been lost. What I try to do is see if the remains can become of use to our head. So some, yes, they do plunder our archives now, but we're not also passive. There's acts which we do, and they do fill the gaps in many ways.
It's wonderful work. If I could turn to you, Hira, speaking of narratives and counter-narratives, narratives that seek to, in some ways, contest and present other images and the dehumanized images that we've seen far too often over the past year especially. I was wondering if you speak about your work and what your work seeks to do, especially in relation to Palestine and countering the perceptions that people may have about Palestine.
Absolutely. So, Assalamu alaikum, my name is Hira. I am the founder and editor of Acacia Magazine, which was founded prior to October 7th to address the problem of Islamophobia in mainstream American media, but obviously October 7th really amplified the need for a magazine like this. I'm sure you're all well aware, Western media and American media specifically censors Palestinian voices and holds Israeli reporters to a very different standard than it holds Palestinian reporters. So the idea is, according to legacy media, Palestinians are not reliable narrators of their own stories. And we wanted to take the second issue of this magazine to really disrupt that idea by featuring the voices of Palestinian writers, journalists, poets, artists, for them to reclaim their agency over their own narrative. So what that's looked like for a literary magazine is, obviously art is a huge component, but we have talked to poets like Musab Abu Taha, who emphasizes the importance of the poet to imagine the lives that were lived before Palestinians were martyred, right? So the idea is we're moving away from a hyperfixation on death and destruction and focusing on the value of Palestinian life. So in a profile that we have in the magazine, he told me, he asks the poet to imagine what Dr. Juman Arfa and her martyred twins, what they were doing before they were struck by an Israeli airstrike. What were her babies wearing? He asks us to imagine what her hopes and dreams were for her twins. So the idea is to enshrine the life of the martyred Palestinians rather than just enshrining their death.
Would you mind reading the poem? Yeah.
So I would actually love to read a poem by Rima Johari. It's called Letter from Children of Darkness. And the prologue of the poem is a quote by Benjamin Netanyahu. He tweeted, "This is a struggle between the children of light and the children of darkness, between humanity and the law of the jungle." It was since deleted, but that was the sort of inspiration for this poem. You take the land, but it does not produce for you. You rename the villages, but we still sing their first names. You poison the water, find us collecting rain. You kill the pregnant mothers, but their infants still live and drink from the river, eat from the sea. You ban our flag, we open watermelons. You build walls, but our voices still carry, our stories still reach. You hunt the journalists, but their truths survive. You bury families alive. You bury even the house cat, break the bones of the mule. You call us animals and we agree. We don't want any part of your humanity. You bomb the bakeries, we all know how to make bread. You arrest children, they grow starved for freedom. You bulldoze the olive, but still we have the seeds. Watch now, they've taken root in every country. Children of light, you have worked very hard to have nothing. Light does not exist without darkness. In the beginning, there was darkness. We will exist in the end.
Thank you. That was stunning. Thank you so much for reading this. I'm wondering now if I could pose a common question to both of you and whoever feels like, just go for it. I'm thinking of specifically of the power of storytelling, the power of art, poetry, prose. Of course, many of us will have heard of Mahmoud Darwish, Hassan Kanafani, and so on. So I'm just wondering if you could both speak to the history of art and artists, beginning from you, Azza, and curators, poets, and so on, in the liberation struggle.
I don't know if I can speak of the history.
But in terms of placing your work in a longer...
but I think, to start with, I think from the beginning, in any, because art is part of human life, and people all the time will produce, regardless if there is war or if there isn't, people will sing, will write, and it's a reflection of their daily life. The issue is art taking us further? Is it giving us more ideas of where we are? And I think the Palestinian society, although it's been subjected continuously and systematically since the 30s till today, it did maintain and manage to produce films and literature and blah, blah, blah. And I was thinking about what you said, and I would like to know more. I'm not sure that there's lack of narratives. In fact, I think even in mainstream media, like you do have the Palestinian narrative, not in the American media, but like you can find that on Al Jazeera International, you can find that on other things. The point is, it's as if the authenticity of narratives have lost its place. Like suddenly Trump can come up and say, who are these Gazans? Who is Gaza? Gaza does not belong to them. And to have this flip in a second, when for 16 months the whole world has been watching a genocide, it's just fascinating. And that's absolutely right. But it tells us how narrative can be manipulated in a second. And it's as if everyone knows it's an acceptable lie, and people just what do you think?
I could not agree more, and I was speaking specifically about the American context, which I think, is hard to imagine just how severe the censorship and the state of punishment is for folks that are speaking out on Palestine. So students are now having their student visas withdrawn if they speak about Palestine, if they tweet about Palestine.
And academics are being terrorized,
academics being fired, slandered, and students are being expelled. So the context of the United States is particularly repressive, and there are incredible writers and artists who are putting out their work despite that, to a great personal cost to their safety and also to their professional careers. And that's sort of what we want to highlight in this magazine. There are other incredible publications that have, published that work as well. There's PalFest, which has been highlighting Palestinian voices. N+1, based in New York, from the very beginning of the genocide, was speaking very actively and publishing Palestinian voices in a time where there was a lot of fear in the United States. And so, I completely agree with you, but the context in the United States is just for, a so-called democracy, very, very repressive.
Could you also speak about the solidarity between various struggles and how they've aligned with the Palestinian struggle, in particular in the US? I'm not thinking specifically of Ta-Nehisi Coates' book that both ignited a lot of controversy, but also in some ways was that very clear statement of allyship between the Black liberation struggle or the Black anti-racist struggle and the Palestinian struggle. So if you could speak to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Black Americans have a long history of solidarity with colonized people. They were, went to Algeria during the Algerian Revolution to learn about how to support the resistance and also how to, employ tactics for their own resistance in the United States. One of the things that we highlighted in our magazine was the way that carceral institutions and the police state operate in both Israel and in the United States. So in the United States, we have, what we call mass incarceration, and that includes the wrongful incarceration of a lot of Black and brown people, also the detention of Muslims in Guantanamo Bay without trial. And what we learned is that the American police institutions, they engage in police exchange programs with the IDF and Israeli police so that they can learn from each other and exchange tactics. And so what you're seeing here is that, the system of policing an American empire that's subjugating Black people is working directly in tandem with the system of policing in so-called Israel, which is subjugating Palestinians.
And of course, that also speaks to a longer history in which technologies of death were first experimented, tried, and perfected in the colony before they made their way back into the metropole. So yeah, that pretty much speaks to, again, a longer history of colonial occupation and so on. I'm sorry I have to ask this question. I know that it's very difficult to say anything, and sometimes I feel that it's difficult to say anything because of the sheer devastation. But I'm asking this because I feel that somehow many of us, including myself, would love to hear from you especially about the question of what now? What happens now?
There used to be a really nice ambassador for the Palestinian embassy in Britain. He was called Hafif Safiya, and he used to say, we have experience in resurrection. And I do believe we do. And the thing is about why I chose to focus on the images from the Palestine Film Unit in Lebanon is because these image creators started making images in the 60s, that is after 1948, when Palestine seemed to have disappeared geographically and as people. And then suddenly you have these filmmakers who are not reproducing images of the past, so they didn't go on a journey of nostalgia and of saying, oh, Palestine was great and they took it from us. Instead, they created the new image of a Palestinian who will fight and change the world into a better place. Very romantic and very sweet. But the point is, I think we did become masters in recreating ourselves, and we are in a very tough period in our history. But the idea of erasure, which the Israeli state is engaging in all the time, and which sometimes, I think everyone feels that, like, as if the world is trying to push the Palestinians out, and you do not exist, just go away. And we will not go away. We will recreate ourselves, and we will find other ways to have. You have to think, outside Palestine, there's 8 million Palestinians. And inside, there's 5 million. So, it's not a nation you can just now wipe out, but it's not easy.
If I could just follow up, I have a few more questions in mind, but again, thinking of what all of us collectively in Pakistan are also thinking of. I know that's a question that I've been struggling with myself. I teach, as I mentioned, and this is a conversation I also have with my students about what could some meaningful solidarity and some practical allyship really look like. Obviously, we're not in the struggle, it's removed from us. We are inundated with images of it. There's also a long history, of course, of Palestinian solidarity, not just in Pakistan, but across the third world. And so, yeah, if there are any reflections on what else solidarity could look like, ought to look like, that'd be great.
I arrived last night, and before I got to Lahore, on the plane I started talking to people, then I get to the airport, and I think solidarity is so present and so obvious, but I think what's happening in the world is somehow that we're all in the same boat, and we need to develop a way of thinking because we do not want a world that is controlled by the strong and the hard, and it's, we want a more fairer world. And I think events like this are where ideas are created and people can think and develop. Today I had a very nice feeling just listening to everybody talking, and I think we are all doing it together. It's not one part giving it's like,
Yeah, so, as a writer and an editor, I obviously think that, the value of the written word and of art has great power to sort of operate in the form of solidarity, but it has its limitations. I think there's no substitute for tangible action. And so one of the things that we've seen, and these are not my ideas, these are, organizers who have done this really incredible work, where they've heeded the call for boycott, divesting, and sanctions. And so you boycott Israeli dates, you boycott Israeli goods, students have been forcing their universities to divest from weapons manufacturers that are sending weapons to Israel. Those are real tangible actions you can take to show your solidarity. Other things, we've had protesters occupy ships that were sending weapons over to Israel to keep them from, effectively sending weapons and selling those arms. So I think all of that is to say the power of direct action and putting your body on the line really can't be overstated.
Great, thank you for that. I have received a note, thank you for the reminder that we are also running out of time, and there may be people in the audience, all of you, who may have questions to ask. So if you do, Yeah, I believe there's a mic circulating somewhere. Is there? Great. So we have people with mics in hand. And so if you have a question, I can't see anything beyond the fourth row, but I'm assuming there are people.
Yeah, this place is like, let's line the speakers.
Great, I believe they have a question. Yes. Yes. Could you go ahead? Yes. Great, fantastic. Wow.
Hi. Thank you for this panel. It's really informative. I just had a small question that in today's time, how do you differentiate like the Western world considering you as an anti-Semite for like raising your voice, just in general?
Sorry, can you repeat this and louder?
Yeah, sure. In today's time and age, it seems like if you raise your voice for a cause, specifically this Palestinian cause, you're considered as an anti-Semite in the Western world. So how do you differentiate from that? Like you make sure you make you're making the right calls so that you don't fit into that category.
Can I answer? I think it's one of in the past 16 months, one of the interesting things is the movement that's been happening between American Jews. And I think this is a very good thing because the slogan of not in my name, because they are supposed to be the Semitic, although so are we, by the way, but it doesn't matter. That's another thing. And I think it's becoming a joke, this anti-Semitic thing, increasingly, especially after they did, what was it called? The declaration for the definition of Zionism, of anti-Semitism. Yeah. So, yes, it is used a lot, but it's also used against Jews and against Israelis. So I think increasingly it's not something that can stop people from saying what they think. But maybe in the States it's different. Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I think the important thing to do is to not react to the definitions that Zionists are setting for what anti-Semitism is, and to continue just forging forward in what you know to be true and to not be anti-Semitic. Otherwise, they'll always move the goalpost and you'll always be censoring yourself, and that doesn't serve anyone.
Yeah, but this is the madness of the world we're in now. Like now, recently, there's all this stuff about are Palestinians really indigenous to the land? And really, you have to defend this? It's like, highly Semitic, yeah.
There's a question on the back over there. Oh, sorry. Or first in the front, yes. Are you well?
Yes.
Go for it.
I just wanted to know, because firstly, thank you so much. I was wondering where we could see your publication, your magazine.
I will pass a copy around, but also you can visit our website, acaciamag.com, and we now do international subscriptions, so please subscribe and you will get a print copy in your mailbox.
Wonderful. So, but it's not internet-based, so it's not, we can't read it online.
You can. We prioritize the print version, but everything eventually gets uploaded to the web.
Wonderful.
Can I just say that the art is amazing? So yeah, that's a shout out to the magazine. It's amazing, yeah.
Hi, thanks so much for this panel. I wanted to ask about your book. It's called Afterlives of Palestinian Images. And we seem to live in a kind of circular time with images coming out of Palestine. Adania Shibli spoke about it, that with Palestine, when you start to tell a story, it could be yesterday, it could be kind of 10 years ago, it could be 48. And it's that same kind of, that narrative doesn't shift. It's nuanced, but it also keeps kind of, there's a circularity to it. So I wonder if maybe you could talk a bit about temporality in your book, and what does it mean when you say afterlives of Palestine?
Yeah, very interesting that you say that, because the rest of the title is the afterlife of Palestinian images, visual remains, and archive of disappearance. And what you just said is so true. In a way, this is a story that's been going for a very long time with variations. But actually, the afterlife of a Palestinian image does not mean that it's death. It means the life that it lives after the violence. So it continues to survive, but it survives now with other elements integrated into it. And as it becomes visual remains, and then it becomes something else. So it's a vibrant cultural thing that is always moving and changing. It's not death and then resurrection. And although there is in the title Archive of Disappearance, the reason I use it is because I argue that the fact that there's always remains after violence, like there's always things that you can still find, have created a group of people who are searchers for visual remains, and they search all the time to try and find them, but in a way they're creating an archive of disappearance because they only use them in order to say, we once existed, this is an evidence of a crime, but not to produce out of them something else. And I'm against archive of disappearance. I think you should bring them and put them in present use instead of, the whole idea, I think, of post-Zionism is based on saying, okay, there was an Akbar, but this is an object of the past. So it's okay as long as we're in the past. The problem is if we're in the present. And this is where it's important, that we are an object of the present. It's not the past story. So I don't know if that answers your question.
This is the guys. Here, please, here. So we have recently heard the Trump's proposed plan of oceanfront real estate, and how about if we propose him to adjust 100% Palestinians, including 8 million plus 5 million, 12 million, and 12 million Israelis side by side, and we should develop the complete real estate oceanfront. Is it a viable solution?
Yes, I think that was more of a comment, but could we, there's a question up above, after, over there. उनकी तरफ भी कोई माइक अगर पहुंचा दे जी आप बोलिए.
My question is in terms of solidarity
Sawal, please. Yes.
With the Palestinians. It appears that the public is fully supporting the cause of Palestine, but the governments are the main hurdles. So how can we influence our governments that they could take a stand against Israel?
How can we make our government?
Yeah, I mean the disconnect between governments and their populations.
Yeah, it's quite funny because in the Arab world this is a very big discussion because while Arab governments are betraying Palestine, the people are not. But I don't know, we need to revolt against all the
Could you please share some recent poetry on genocide? Some recent poetry?
yes, recently.
Even if you could recite in Arabic.
Yes.
I shared a poem by Rima Johari earlier. I can share a poem that Masaba Abutaha wrote. Just one moment. Alright, this poem's called What Families Should Do During Genocide by Masaba Abutaha. Don't move a lot. Save some energy because you will need it. When you have to run, when a missile falls near you or on your house, train your muscles. One arm to raise heavy things like a concrete pillar when the house is bombed, another to shield your faces when steel bars get close to poking your eyes. Train your whole bodies to resist weight, like when your bedroom ceiling collapses on you. Try and stay in different houses so you don't all die, just as a traveler does not put all valuable memories in one suitcase. Try not to travel at all.
So this isn't so much of a question, it's actually an observation because we've seen a very broad discussion on what is affectionately called culture side, which is the erasure of literature, art, poetry, anything that documents the living history of human beings, correct? And we are sitting at the Lahore Literary Festival. And then the moderator very correctly asked what are ways of effective support and solidarity. And my question then perhaps is, and it's an observation also, that perhaps we now need to start becoming more introspective in nature. Perhaps the Lahore Literary Festival needs to start becoming more introspective in nature and questioning then why are the logos of the EU, the French embassy, the Austrian embassy, the British Council, and I believe that's the Italian embassy, who are, for all intents and purposes, supporting and perpetuating and have been giving blanket cover to Israel for the last, well, decades, but let's say for the last 13, 14, 15 months. Why are they then the sponsors of a cultural festival which is supposed to be in support of literature? And we're sitting and discussing with the panel how the erasure of these aspects are taking place right now. So that's my comment, is actually more for the LLF.
Go and burn these hoardings.
There's already a mic over there. If I may, sorry.
I just wanted to, you mentioned post-Zionism, but with what's happening in the world, what's been happening for over a year, what's been happening for decades.
Zionism is not.
Do we see post-Zionism ever happening?
You know, it's quite funny because I've, as a filmmaker, I've met in festivals lots of Israeli filmmakers, and I was thinking about that actually because the second generation of Israelis, they didn't think before the 7th of October that it's finished. Nakba is past them, and in a way, I think one of the interesting things of what's happening now is the Israeli society needs to acknowledge that the Nakba is still happening and that they are, as individuals, personally responsible for it by not taking a stand. People need to stand. There is, of course, some people in Israel who are taking a stand, but it needs to become, so in a way I agree with you, it's not yet post, but there was an illusion, and there's actually literature about post-Zionism and the way they behave and the way they think. But yeah, I remember when 7th of October happened and they were saying this was a great Israeli failure in terms of security. A big part of it is the assumption that the Palestinians were already dead. So no one had to worry about anything. And the surprise was that they're not dead. And people are still ready to fight and they're still present. But the ethical question now is the ethnic cleansing that's happening, the present Israelis are responsible for it and not their grandparents or parents. It's them. And this is an issue which, it's like they need to put a mirror in front of themselves. I agree with you.
No, I'm sorry to sound so pessimistic, but it just seems that even Palestinians surviving makes Zionism more firmly entrenched.
Yes.
They have more of a reason to exist. So very pessimistic about when is this post-Zionism.
To be honest, I don't think, now it's sad, but at the end of the day, any structure that is so racist against its inhabitants, the people around it, I can't see it surviving on the long run in the same way. It has to evolve and change. It's it cannot be maintained. I don't know. Well, maybe I'm wrong.
We hope so.
Yeah.
Final question, G.
It's kind of related, in fact, to the comment that was made about how do we, as people who are interested in the arts, interested in culture, and interested in resistance, how do we deal with the fact that so often colonizing forces, the forces of imperialism, co-opt these spaces as a way of entrenching themselves further, as a way of evolving the mythology of empire as liberator? So how do we in these spaces work against that?
You know, I was so excited when I got that invitation to Lahore, because usually the spaces that invite you are in the West. And I think we need to increase discussion among ourselves, people of the other world, you know, because yes, we can come up with something. And just listening to people here, I really do not feel that I'm the Palestinian and I'm telling you about, you know, there is some kind of common feeling of us in a situation. And I think that's what we need to work on.
So thank you. I think that's a powerful note to end on as well. If I may, on behalf of the audience, I just want to thank both of you for not just coming to Lahore, but also for your work.